Hey team, welcome back. Yet another week here on Cold Stuff and Chill. I hope you had a great week. We are getting kind of a late start recording, and we spent a copious amount of time talking about mixed cocktails. Spoiler alert, I'm participating in a cocktail competition soon, and my mixology skills, I have found out, are very subpar. So by the time we post this, it'll be too late to give me suggestions. Actually, no, I'll still have a few days for suggestions. So feel free to DM me those because I need help. Basically, the cocktails that I made last night were an assault on all the senses.
And I'm not offering very much help because I'm also not really an alcohol person. Again, I'll have a glass of wine every once in a while, but
Here's the issue, though, is that while I know that I'm not much of a drinker and I know my mixology skills not great, I don't like to lose. So, and you know what? Here's the thing. By the time all 7 cocktails have been consumed, nobody's going to be sober enough to even vote. There's not going to be any sort of clear distinction of who the winner is, I'm sure. I should also, just in case anyone is concerned or curious, everyone I'm traveling with, we're all vaccinated. A lot of them are healthcare workers, so they're taking it very seriously. And we have a private lake house. We're not really interacting with the public at all. We're all being very cautious and safe about it in general in our own lives. So I think it's going to be fine. Even though we're going to Missouri, we're going to not associate with the Missourians. So the Halloween candy is starting to come out. It is August 29th. Too early for some, for me. I'm in my heyday. But they have Nerds candy corn. Basically, the inside of it is like a Nerds rope, and then it's like a hard candy shell and the Nerds flavoring. So, but it's shaped like a candy corn. There's no reason for it to be called a candy corn other than how do we make this fall themed? But they're very good.
I could get behind that.
I'm a big fan of anything that Nerds does, honestly.
They're gummy clusters.
Oh my god, they're so good.
It's like a Nerds rope without the commitment of a Nerds rope. Because you get a Nerds rope, you can't exactly eat just part of a Nerds rope.
You have to do the whole thing.
Yeah. Sometimes I just want a couple bites of candy because I'm not really a sweets person anyway. And it's I'm in the mood for sweets. I have a sweet. I'm like, okay, I'm done. So you find me eating half a Nerds rope and then being like, this is wasteful. But those gummy clusters.
Oh, primo.
Chef's kiss.
Prime time, baby.
But no, I'll have to try the candy corns because I'm intrigued now.
Yeah. I am looking for the perfect jar to put them in because they're very cute. So I want them on display, not in their bag. So I don't know. I gotta go to Marshall's maybe and find a jar to put them in.
You could check the Halloween section of Target too, or the dollar spot for potion bottles or something.
Oh, I got potion bottles from the dollar spot yesterday. They're tray cute, but they're very small. They're little, but they're very cute for decoration purposes.
Actually, so I saw a TikTok the other day of somebody putting their medication in one of those potion bottles.
I saw that too, yeah. Actually, no, I think you sent that to me.
I think I did. And I was like, here's an idea.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about it. But also well, maybe it's in this container because it needs to not have moisture and stuff, so.
I don't think those plastic containers are keeping moisture out.
Probably not, no.
Like,
I'm also not supposed to keep it in the bathroom, but I keep it in the bathroom, so.
I keep mine on the counter.
Yeah.
I also have a cute little, like, pill box for when I go places, just to, like, here's my Adderall, microdosing my meth today.
Ashlee story time. What are you talking about this week?
Okay, so for this week, I wanted to do something kind of spooky to start pumping us up for Halloween, because it is into spooky season. Like, we need to be any more pumped up, but just something to add on.
Oh, wait. Should we inform the listeners that your Starbucks... Oh, I'll let you tell it.
Okay, so biggest tragedy of the day today. Obviously, Starbucks, we love it any day of the year, but we love it most during spooky season because they have pumpkin spice lattes, which are just delightful. And you can call us basic, whatever, but you can't stop me from loving a good pumpkin spice latte or pumpkin flavored item because it's just...
Preach.
Like, I get their pumpkin loaf year round.
Oh my god, it's so good.
It is. It's just, like, the perfect, and then it has the little, like, crunchy pumpkin seeds on top, and it's just, like, a good texture experience. So I was going to get a pumpkin spice latte today because they just re-released it, like, a few days ago or, like, a week ago.
Less than a week, yeah.
And I go to order it online, and they don't have any pumpkin spice latte. They're completely out of that. They're completely out of the, what is it, apple crisp.
The apple crisp one sucks, but it was not good.
Okay, well, they're out of that as well. Not that I probably am going to try it now, but they're out of pretty much all of the new flavors. And this is just a theme across my Starbucks, which is an incredibly first world problem, but they constantly have, like, the seasonal items just not be in stock. Like, all summer they didn't have the dragon fruit refreshers or the strawberry refreshers. And I understand that there's a lot of supply chain stuff going on right now, but it's like, you couldn't have prepared for the pumpkin spice latte. Like, you're this behind.
Well, I also have a bone to pick with them because typically when we get PSLs, we also get the salted caramel. But they did not do the salted caramel this year. And I know that it's just the normal caramel and they put a little bit of, I think it's like toffee nut or something in it. And then they put the salt on top. But I want to be able to just go and order my salted caramel mocha. And it's not there.
Well, and they also had, like, I haven't had the brown sugar one at mine. They had it for, like, a week, and that was it. They're actually building one kind of around the block, so I might have to start going to that one because I feel like this one is just, I don't know if it's just...
Ain't it, Chief?
Yeah, the managers don't order enough, or just because it is in kind of a popular location, if there's just too much traffic going through. But yeah, that's my beef with Starbucks this morning.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to interject because you said spooky season. I was like, pumpkin spice.
Ultimate anime betrayal.
I need to see if my Starbucks has it still. I'm sure. I hope it does.
Well, don't you have the Starbucks app?
I do, but I don't want to drive to Starbucks.
Oh, yeah, see.
It's like a 30-minute drive from my house to get to a Starbucks.
Especially if you're only going for Starbucks.
Yeah, like, I have to be... So I live next to a city, like a smallish city. But instead of living in the city, we're like, let's live in this small town next to the city. So it takes me like 25 minutes to get to, Target because it's on the opposite side of the big town that we live outside of. So Target and Starbucks are kind of like the same location. They're like they're both on the same side of the town is what I'm saying. So it takes me quite a bit of time, but Dunkies only takes me about 15 minutes. So I've turned into a Dunkies girl lately because it's just easier for me.
See, I like Dunkies as far as being able to get donuts with my coffee, but I'm not a huge fan of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I like a plain iced coffee from there, and that's about it. Or a matcha.
Yeah, I don't get the warm coffees there, but I always get like the caramel macchiato is what I usually get.
Yeah. I've been burned by our local Dunkin' Donuts, like caramel macchiatos or French vanilla cappuccinos. Like, for some reason, they like just do not make them right at ours.
Ah, that sucks. So, spooky season.
Spooky season. So, for this week, I decided to do the Winchester Mystery House.
Ooh.
Which may or may not be one of the biggest tourist traps in the world. So, our story today starts with Sarah Winchester, who was born in New Haven, Connecticut around 1839, to Sarah Burns and Leonard Party. Her father became a carpenter, providing the family with enough financial security, so Sarah was allowed to go to school instead of working in the coal mines. And she was a really good student. She was wicked smart. She learned 4 languages and became proficient in musical composition, math, and science. She also had the reputation for being the prettiest girl at the Harvest Moon Ball, and so they called her the Belle of New Haven.
Aww.
Now, Sarah had a childhood friend named William Winchester, who is the heir to the Winchester Davies shirt manufactory, and he really liked the cut of her jib, so on September 30th, 1862, Sarah and Willie got married.
He liked the cut of her what?
The cut of her jib. I don't know. It's just an old-timey way of saying he liked her.
Oh. I like that. The cut of her jib. I'm going to have to remember that.
You never heard that before?
I've never heard that before.
Now I have to make sure that's really a saying.
I'm sure it is. I'm positive it is. I just...
Yeah.
Dictionary, please define.
Liking one's general appearance or personality.
Oh.
In the 17th century, the shape of the jib sail often identified a vessel's nationality, whether it was hostile or friendly. And the term is used figuratively in the early 1800s, often to express like or dislike for someone.
Okay, I'm a fan.
So let's bring back cut of your jib. I like the cut of your jib.
Yeah. Guys, Colt, that's like... We need to bring that we need to bring that slang back. Also, I just wanted to let you know, anytime you're editing, when I stumble over my words, just feel free to leave it, because that's how I talk in real life. So, like, get used to it, fam. I'm not drunk. My tongue just doesn't fit in my mouth properly, I don't think.
I think that's an ADHD thing, too.
Probs. That would make sense.
Yeah. Because I get that, too, where I either start stuttering or I just start...
It's like my brain is thinking of the words that are going to come out of my mouth before my mouth, like, too fast for my mouth to form them properly. And so it just, like, spills out like word vomit. And it sounds like in Mean Girls where she goes, "That's gruel."
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I have to stop myself sometimes and just be like, so I was saying... And just really enunciate to get myself back on track. Because it's like almost like your brain derails off of... Or your mouth derails off of what your brain was trying to tell it to do. But anyways, cut of your jib. We're bringing it back.
Love it.
Willie was set up to take over the shirt factory after his father's retirement. But after Sarah and Willie were married, his father, Oliver Winchester, decided that he liked the way that cold steel felt in his hands more than he liked shirts. So he decided to invest in the Volcanic Arms Company, later establishing the Winchester Repeating Arms Company in 1866. And from there, he created the Winchester Repeating Rifle, which is basically a modified ripoff of the Henry Repeating Rifle, which, if you're unaware, is a rifle that actually helped win the Civil War for the North. Because before, it was just single-shot muskets and shit that were hard to load, and this was something that you could... shoot more than one round out of. And so that really I wouldn't say that turned the tide of the war, because there was a lot of things that turned the tide of the war, but that was one of the things that helped the North to overtake the South and cement their victory. And there was also some legal issues between, I think, the guy that created the Henry Repeating Rifle and Winchester, because he's like, that's a ripoff. He's like, well, it's a better design, so fuck you, man. Whatever the case, the rifle business became incredibly successful, with the Winchester Model 1873 rifle being known as the gun that won the West, and the company sold over 700,000 rifles from 1873 to 1916. Buffalo Bill Cody, Annie Oakley, and Teddy Roosevelt were all avid Winchester fans, and it was very common. Like, kids were saying, oh, I want a Winchester rifle when I grow up, Dad. It was like getting an iPhone today.
It's like that kid off the Christmas Story that really wants that, like, BB gun.
Yeah.
But insert, like, actual firearms.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like, I want to be like Annie Oakley and Teddy Roosevelt, Dad. So they're successful. They're making a ton of money off of this. But things weren't all peaches and cream for the Winchester family. Sarah had a baby that she named Annie in 1866, who unfortunately was unable to process calories for some reason and died from malnourishment a few weeks after birth. In December of 1880, Oliver Winchester, Sarah's father-in-law, passed away, and he left all of his Winchester stakes to his son Willie, which was over 50% of the company. However, a few months later, Willie also passed away from tuberculosis, leaving those same Winchester stakes to Sarah, which amounted to about $20 million, or about $550 million in today's money.
Holy shit.
Not only that, but from the shares of Winchester stock, she was making about $1,000 a day in passive income, which would now look to be about $27,000 a day.
Oh my god, that's like as much as I make in a year.
So she's rolling in the bank. Like, she's rich. She's not just like a comfortable, she's rich. Now, according to the legend, what's a rich, devastated widow to do but attempt to contact the spirits of the dead and see if she can communicate with them? So she reaches out to a Boston medium to contact the spirits of her late husband and daughter, which her daughter was a baby, but I don't know. She thought that this spirit would contact her or something.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the spiritualist manages to get in touch with Willie and gives this magnificent yarn about how their family and fortune are haunted by the people who had been killed by the Winchester rifle, and to help appease and fight off the ghosts, the only answer was to head out west and work around the clock to build a home to appease the good spirits and confuse the hell out of the bad ones. And this had to be a non-stop process. You had to have people in there day and night working constantly to keep up this building so that the spirits didn't go after Sarah. So what does Sarah decide to do with this information? She decides to move out to California and girl boss it up and build the original McMansion. In 1886, she purchased a 40-acre plot of land in San Jose, California, which already had an 8-room semi-finished cottage on it, and she got to work. She allegedly held seances with the spirits to go over building plans, which she relayed to her contractors, and they fulfilled dutifully. Her dedicated builders worked tirelessly over 38 years straight to fulfill her dreams, which would end up costing about $5 million. Eventually, this modest cottage became a sprawling 7-story mansion, and the property at its largest was 162 acres. Now, the house is built on a floating foundation that allegedly saved it from total ruin from several earthquakes, because it's in California, so there's just earthquakes all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
However, in 1906, one of the earthquakes took out the top 3 stories of the mansion, and Sarah said, "This is a sign that I need to keep it to 4 floors, so she brought in some carpenters to fix what was there and keep working on the house. As it stands today, there are nearly 160 rooms, including 40 bedrooms, 2 ballrooms, 47 fireplaces, 10,000 panes of glass, 17 chimneys, a seance room, 2 basement levels, and 3 elevators. But nowadays, the size of the property itself has been reduced to 4.5 acres. Now, Sarah and the ghosts were not architects, so the layout of the mansion is confusing and contains oddities such as doors and stairs that go to nowhere, windows overlooking other rooms, like interior rooms, fake bathrooms, stairs with odd-sized risers, and there's also talk of secret passageways and doors that would allow her to spy on her servants to ensure they were doing their jobs and not stealing anything. Now, environmental psychologists have actually studied the building and said that the layout coupled with the floating foundation create like a subconscious sense of unease that could actually explain some of the feeling of being haunted, because it's like you're uneasy in your surroundings but you can't explain why, so you kind of associate that with ghosts. On top of this, Sarah really spared no expense when it came to her ghosty friends, and she never skimped on the adornments for the house. She outfitted it with stained glass windows, gold and silver chandeliers, hand-inlaid parquet floors and trim, made out of all variety of colors and exotic materials.
Gotta spoil your besties, man.
Yeah. I mean, when the ghosts say you gotta build this shit so we don't murder you, you gotta make it nice.
Yeah.
She commissioned the Pacific American Decorative Company to create many of the stained glass windows for her house, including a spiderweb window featuring a web design in the repetition of the number 13, one of her other obsessions. And another incredibly valuable window in the house is one designed by Tiffany himself that, when struck by sunlight, would cast rainbows across the room. However, this window was installed in an interior room with no light, so the effect cannot actually be seen. So great waste of a Tiffany window.
Right? I have to Google the spiderweb window.
And was never actually installed. It's actually sitting in a room in the house. It's called like the $25,000 room, where she had all of these, at the time that she had purchased it, all of these things cost $25,000, but now it's like the cost is immeasurable because obviously things aren't made like that anymore, and it's a lot more valuable.
Right.
So it's like millions of dollars just sitting in this room.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I just Googled, and it's, literally a room just full of like stained glass panes, but they're not like installed anywhere. They're just leaning up against the wall, basically.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a vibe, though. Just to have that room just full of windows that aren't actually installed. It looks kind of cool.
Also, now I want to do like spiderweb windows.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I found the picture of the spiderweb window, and it's kind of cool.
It's a vibe. So another thing about the house is that Sarah suffered from debilitating arthritis later in life, so she decided to make all of her stairways easy riser staircases, which allowed her to raise her foot only a few inches rather than like the usual steep incline, especially in those older houses. I don't know if anyone listening has ever lived in an older house, but those staircases are deathly sometimes. Like the one at my parents' house, they really need to just take that bitch out and put something else in there because it is scary deadly. Like, I have fallen down those stairs so many times. In the house, there was only one working toilet and hot water shower, but there were other conveniences that were considered extravagant and costly at the time, such as steam and forced air heating, push-button gas lights, and 3 elevators, which again were to help Sarah get around due to her arthritis. All good things must come to an end, and in 1922, Sarah passed away from congestive heart failure, leaving all of her possessions to her niece and secretary. They took everything that they wanted and sold the rest in a private auction, which allegedly took 6 trucks working 8 hours a day for 6 weeks to remove all the furniture from the house, although that claim was never really substantiated. That seems just kind of like one of those urban legend type things. The house itself, however, was not mentioned in her will and was deemed worthless due to the damage caused by the 1906 earthquake. And in addition to the random ass layout, highly proprietary setup, it was sold at auction for just over $135,000 to a local investor in 1923. After the investor bought the house, John and Mamie Brown leased the house and opened it to the public that same year and started giving tours, with Mamie acting as the first tour guide. Eventually, the Browns purchased the house and is still owned privately by the Winchester Investments, LLC, representing the descendants of the Browns, where tours are still held today. Now, it's said that among all the spirits in the house, all of the ones that were vengeful or kind spirits killed by the Winchester rifles, it's also said that a caretaker named Clyde haunts the house, and that Sarah Winchester also haunts the house to this day. Now, at this point, you're saying, okay, great. Winchester Mystery House story, yes, we've heard it, we know it, we love it. But what you don't know is that there's not actually a whole lot of evidence that any of this is correct. Except for, obviously...
Is it just all made up?
Well, I'm going to get into that. Mary Jo Ignafo, lady, I think she was a school teacher, she wrote a book where she did an incredible amount of research into letters and communications between Sarah and her contractors and her contemporaries, and she wrote a book in 2010 called Captive of the Labyrinth, Sarah L. Winchester, Heiress to the Rifle Fortune, where she details out the evidence that she found to back up some of these claims that the Browns, again, the people who bought it after she passed eventually, and are giving all these tours, she said that a lot of their claims cannot be substantiated at all. So she found evidence that the original medium story was not real at all, that Sarah had never visited a medium, that her contractors did not think or were not under the assumption that she was accepting ghostly blueprints to build the house. They were all working under the knowledge that it was maybe an unconventional layout, but Sarah was just particular about how she wanted things to look, and it was sort of a hobby for her to get into. There was no evidence that she ever held seances, because part of the culture of the time is that seances, it was like a very social event. You don't really do a Ouija board by yourself. You don't really have seances by yourself. So saying that she had private seances in her seance room was just not accurate, because she was a pretty private person. She did suffer with depression. And there's more evidence that in the room it was just a closet. She had clothes, just regular clothes in. All of this really confusing architecture, like doors leading to nowhere, stairs that go up to the ceiling, and windows looking into other rooms, were not actually built to confuse vengeful spirits, but instead was the direct result of the contractors just trying to keep the elements out of the house after the 1906 earthquake, that originally these went somewhere, but when everything collapsed, like the top 3 floors collapsed, that they just closed it off instead of taking out all the original fixtures. And it's actually very well documented that while Sarah did have them come in and seal it up and work on the house, that she had actually moved out of the house about 2 decades before her passing, because it was basically condemned at that point. She's like, we're going to close it up. We're going to make it so that it's not going to get totally destroyed, but I don't want to live there anymore. Another myth is that work was required around the clock. It is well documented again that Sarah let the workers take breaks for months at a time. In addition to them needing breaks, she needed a break from all the hammering. And there's this misconception that she was a crazy, crazed old paranoid widow. Her contemporaries said that basically she was an amazing, kind person. And while she was very private, she did suffer from depression. She refused to be a gossip. She was a very interesting person and was very well aware of her surroundings. It wasn't like she was just, dementia-ridden, laying around this house talking to ghosts. That's kind of a misconception that, again, the Browns were putting out there, that she's just this crazy old woman talking to ghosts trying to build this house. The claims that she was paranoid and spying on her servants using secret passages just absolutely wasn't true. She had great relationships with all of her servants. She would frequently talk to them about their families and what was going on in their lives. She would give them money for, their children's education, and she left some of them money in her will, and she employed people for years. It wasn't like she had this revolving door of servants coming in and out. So that doesn't exactly line up with a paranoid employer.
Mm-mm.
And there's really not a lot of evidence that Sarah was interested in the occult at all. Many of the stories of her alleged interest in the occult came from the Browns and their retellings of the stories. And basically what Mary Jo, the author of this book, said is that they were glorified carnies. They were just trying to get this sideshow attraction off the road. And, they got this house so they could have this location, started telling all of these yarns so that people would come in and pay money to see it. And they're really blowing it out of proportion just because they were doing it in the best interest of money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like anybody could really fact check back then.
Yeah.
Mary Jo, the author, again, seems to think that Sarah just had this, hobby that she was interested in building and interior design. And was it the most tasteful? No. But that she just needed something to do after her family had died, and she was lonely, she was depressed, she wanted to kind of surround herself with beautiful things.
Well, it sounds like, too, the people that were working on the home and in the home kind of became her family, too, so to, keep them building would mean to keep them, around with her.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. But it's also, she wasn't, totally dependent on them, because, again, she's, take some time off, take a couple months off. There's also, a story that, on the day that she died, that they immediately stopped working on the house. There's half-driven nails into it. And some of the stuff that's in the house, Mary Jo actually says she thinks that the Browns added so that they could have this, narrative in this story.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're really just doing her memory a disservice by retelling the story over and over again. And so that's why when you see a lot of people go to the Winchester Mystery House and do tours and stuff for content, they're telling the same story over and over again, because that's the narrative the Browns want to push. And their LLC has been proven to kind of be intimidating employees, but they're saying, we can't discuss about who owns a house, and we can't look into it at all. We can't look into any of these stories. We just have to, believe that this is what happened. So it's just incredibly shady on their part that they keep pushing this narrative, and it's they won't let you do a tour or make content on this unless you tell their narrative of the story. So.
That's shitty.
Yeah.
Because she sounds like a lovely woman, and they're just, making her sound like a crazy person.
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing about this as a kid and seeing pictures of this house, and I'm like, this doesn't, I don't know. There's sometimes where I see a picture of something, I'm like, that does not look haunted to me. Mm-mm. I'm sorry. Or that doesn't feel haunted.
It's a little far-fetched to believe, too, that it was the spirits of the people that were killed by the guns, right? Is what they were telling people. That doesn't I don't feel like that's how a haunting would work.
No. It's why wouldn't they be mad at the people that killed them or haunt their descendants? Or
right.
I don't know. A lot of these stories actually did not pop up until after her death in 1922. And the other thing is some of the stories did come from people in the area, but it's just because they didn't really know her. And they kind of deafened the people that did know her and were in communication with her. There's stories of the people who were in communication with her being no, she's a lovely person. She's fantastic. She's great. And then other people being yeah, no, shut up. She's a crazy old bat.
Yeah. That stinks. R.I.P. Sarah. You're an OG baddie. Love you.
She was a baddie. I guess it just is kind of a lens into how historically depression has been looked into. Because it's like, if you look at someone who's depressed today, I could totally see someone who's depressed today being like that. And
well, it's kind of in the same vein of like ordering a shitload of things on Amazon.
yeah.
She's just like chasing that dopamine high by like renovating and decorating her house, because that's how millionaires cope. R.I.P. Sarah.
That's our lesson for today, is
That's our lesson.
get help for your mental illness before you build a 160-room mansion.
Devan's story time. Ooh.
What are you going to talk about?
We're just going to get into it. I'm going to set the scene for you, okay? So, picture this. You're in Paris. It is the year 1760. Your dress, it's huge. Your hair, it is huge. Your likeliness to contract smallpox and or syphilis, also huge. And you are at the party of Madame du Pompadour, who is an elderly mistress of King Louis XV. So, like, go off, queen. The fact that she's still a mistress and she's an old baddie, like, she must have had some golden lady bits for that to have happened for her. But anyways, so she hears that a gentleman by the name of Count De St Germain arrives at this old house party, and she's like, wait, hold up, which count? And so you see him from across the room, and he's like a total hottie, super charismatic, super cultured, 10 out of 10 would get the final rose. But she's curious because she had known Count de St Germain while in Venice, but that was literally 50 years ago in 1710. So at that point, she was young and hot herself, but the man that she knew was approximately 45. So she approaches this dude and is like super shook to see that he didn't appear to have aged at all. And so she asks him if his father had been in Venice. And he just kind of laughs it off and says, no, madame, but I myself was living in Venice at the end of the last and the beginning of this century. I had the honor to pay you court then. So wait, hold up, what the fuck? Like, how? So she's not buying it, and she's like, forgive me, that is impossible. The Count de St Germain I knew in those days was at least 45 years old, and you look to be like that age now. And so again, he's like, madam, I am very old, and just smiles it off. And then she's like, wait, but that would mean you'd have to be like at least 100. Again, he looks hot, he looks young, in his prime. And he just goes, that is not impossible, basically implying that he is indeed 100 years old. And so from there, this guy, he goes to give an extremely detailed account of their shenanigans from 50 years ago. And Madame Pompadour and those in the room are all convinced that this is the dude. Worth noting, they're also probably all drunk and eating their weight in macaroons. But I digress. Who is this most excellent dude? Well, he is, in my opinion, the most interesting man in the world. Like, sorry, Dos Equis man, we don't know you. This is Jacques De St Germain. He is part man, he is part alchemist, part artist, he is a jack of all trades, and potentially a vampire.
Ooh.
I know, I'm really on that vampire train from last week to this week. And I was like, you know what, let's just do it again. And we're even going to mention New Orleans again because, duh, vampires, so.
Okay, wait, side note. So there is, I'm sure that this character is probably based off of this dude, but in Castlevania, there's a guy named Saint Germain.
Yep, say based off of this dude, for sure. And then also there's a character on Outlander that's based on this guy, but he's not portrayed as a vampire in Outlander, so.
Outlander's like a different vibe, though, because that's like time travel type shit.
Yeah.
Well, Saint Germain in Castlevania is not a vampire either, but that's a whole different thing.
However, there is some speculation of time travel in this story, so really, maybe Outlander is ahead of the game, and they'll get to that point at some other time, but I digress. Let's tell you about our boy. He is referenced to as the Comte de Saint Germain, which is basically, I think, French for count. We're just going to call him Jacques because I'm uncultured swine, and that is the easy way to refer to him. So he is said to be a European adventurer. He had a really vested interest in science, alchemy, and the arts. So alchemy is like old-timey chemistry, basically. But truth be told, like, nobody really knows where the heck he came from. His real name, anyway, is unknown, and his birth and background are totally obscure. Like, at we just don't know where he came from. But like towards the end of his life, he does claim that he is the son of Prince Francis II. You know, guys, I don't really know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to do my best. Prince Francis II Rakoczy of Transylvania. Convenient, because we're talking about vampires. Even after his, like, quote-unquote death, there are sightings and stories about him, so, like, who knows if that's the truth. Jacques Boy, he, like, sort of mysteriously appears on the European social scene in France in the 1700s, and through stories, it's suggested that he may have been alive, like, long before that. Even speculation that he had been alive in the time of Christ and had, like, attended the wedding at Cana, which, if you're religious, maybe you know what that is. I just know it in the painting. I didn't know it was an actual event in the Bible, but apparently it was, so.
Isn't that the one where Jesus turns water into wine?
It is, yes. It is indeed.
Yeah, see, I went to Bible school.
Who got married that day, I wonder?
I don't know. I didn't pay that close of attention.
Me either. Because I didn't go to Sunday school. Okay, that's a lie. I went for like a handful of times in my Sunday school. They had these like trading cards, and each time you went, you would get a trading card. And so you had like Ruth and Moses and like all these other trading cards. And I went like, I had 3 Ruth cards because I would always get stuck with stinking Ruth cards. Maybe that's the reason I stopped going to church, because I was so butthurt that I kept getting the same trading card every week.
I feel like they should have a better program for that than just like you get 3 Ruth cards. You're getting slacks!
They wouldn't let me trade them either.
Well, then what's the point of the trading cards?
You can trade them with others, but nobody wanted to trade for a Ruth because Ruth was like the most common of the Pokemon that you could get in trading cards, so everyone had a Ruth and nobody wanted to trade. It was bullshit. Anyways, back to Jacques. So during the 18th century, he like traveled extensively throughout Europe over the period of about like 40 to 50 years. And in all that time, as Madame Pompadour had discovered, also, side note, that is like the coolest name. Like, my name is Madame Pompadour. Like, I don't know. She sounds like a Pomeranian personified.
Yeah.
I think. As she had discovered, he seemed to, over this period of time, never age. He was also a man, like I said, of many, many, many talents. Like, more talents than any one person should have the time to perfect in a lifetime. Yet, like, here he was, showing off and just, like, truly exuding BDE. Like, buckle up and prepare to feel like you have done nothing and accomplished nothing in your life, because here's just, like, a small sampling of what this dude, like, was into and good at. First off, he could play the violin like an absolute virtuoso. He was, like, so good at this that he actually wrote an opera that was performed in London, and, like, some of his pieces are still held in some famous music library in England. I can't remember the name of, but just trust me on this one. It was also, he, like, wrote a couple operas that were performed. I said that already, but he himself only, despite being, like, super talented, only really performed on stage, I think, once or twice. Like, he was just good at it and humble, and he was like, no, you guys do it, I'm good. He was also an accomplished painter, and wherever he traveled, he also would set up like an elaborate laboratory, presumably for his alchemy work. People actually speculated that he had the ability to transmute base metals into gold. He never performed this feat in front of anyone, but that would explain his wealth given the lack of background info we have on him. Like, he just kind of popped out of nowhere, was rich, and, like, intermingling with royalty, basically, so he had to have had money. Another goal of alchemists was to search for the Philosopher's Stone, which is a stone that grants whoever holds it immortality. So, we're leaning into the vampire myth, we're leaning into the basically, it's a sorcerer's stone off of Harry Potter, same thing. He would also concoct recipes for the removal of facial wrinkles and for dyeing hair, so maybe he just got really good at his craft, and that's how he looked so young. He also was a very skilled jewelry maker. He would make jewelry for royalty. He had these shoes that were literally studded in jewels, and he claimed to be able to fuse several small diamonds into one large one, and he could also make pearls grow just like to a huge abnormal size. He also was fluent in pretty much every European language at the time, and he had basically an encyclopedic knowledge of how every country was formed and their entire history of rulers, etc., etc. He could, like, recall events from hundreds of years ago as if he had been there himself. So this guy either has way too much free time, is a genius, full-on genius, or he's had a lot more time than the average person to perfect his crafts and trades.
Honestly, this dude sounds like he just has ADHD.
He might, yeah.
This bitch just be microdosing meth for this shit, honestly.
Yeah, he's just good at everything. And apparently he's very charming and charismatic as well. So throughout the 18th century, this guy, he continues to use like his seemingly endless knowledge of the world and in politics and social skills, yada yada. And essentially, I don't want to say scams his way, but he like weasels his way into the circles of pretty much all like European elites. Like he really gets in there. In the 1740s, he ends up as a trusted diplomat in the court of King Louis of France. He performs secret spy missions for him in England. And then in 1760, he performed a similar function at The Hague where he met the infamous lady's man Casanova. They are buds. And Casanova goes on to say about him that this extraordinary man would say in an easy, assured manner that he was at least 300 years old and that he knew the secret of the universal medicine and that he possessed a mastery over nature and that he could melt diamonds. All of this, he said, was mere trifle to him. So he's probably a very great storyteller as well, if people are believing him in this. I also feel like if you were at a dinner party with Casanova, everyone would be really hammered, so.
Yeah. Honestly, this kind of reminds me of the story of, what is it, Marie Laveau?
Yeah.
Is that who it is? Am I thinking of the right person?
The voodoo witch in New Orleans?
Yeah. She claimed to be immortal and basically just, it was like Marie Laveau was more of a title than a person. She just would like bring up her daughter to look like her and would just like switch it out when she became too old. This is what this sounds like to me. Like it's like multiple dudes that just either have kids or pick doppelgangers, and then it's like, yes, I am.
And like each one of those versions of him has one talent that he's very good at, and then they just kind of like rotate in and out depending on where they're going and what party they're attending. Yeah,
like it's like a MLM of interesting dudes.
I mean, that's a very good theory. Is that he's not one most interesting man in the world. He's like 9 or 10 sort of interesting dudes, and then together they make this like Superman.
Anyways,
so
continue.
Yeah, he's still on his world tour of Europe. So in 1762 he travels to Russia, and it's said that he was complicit in the conspiracy that placed Catherine the Great on the throne, and then he later advises the commander of the Imperial Russian armies in a war against Turkey, which they end up winning. In 1774 he goes back to France when Louis and Marie Antoinette occupied the throne, and he allegedly warns them of the revolution that was to come 15 years in the future. Clearly, they didn't take him seriously. And then the last stop on his, baddie world tour is in 1779. He appears in Hamburg, Germany, where he befriends Prince Charles of Hesse-Kassel. It's German. Anyway, for the next 5 years, he lives there as a guest in the prince's castle. And according to local records, this is where he officially died in February 27th of 1784. If he were an ordinary man, the story would stop here. Obviously, we know he's not. So, again, official records, they show he's born in 1710 and died in 1784, but many, many people have claimed to see him since then, even as recently as 1970. I feel like after his death and then this rebirth, he kind of like goes into his new age, like metaphysical stage. So whoever picked up the title of Saint Germain at this point was like, maybe a little more eccentric than the previous incarnations, because the first record of seeing him after his alleged death in 1784 was the next year. He is seen in Germany with Anton Mesmer, who is a pioneer hypnotist. And so some people claim that Saint Germain is the one that gives this dude the ideas for hypnotism and like trains him and shows him how to like quote unquote use personal magnetism to get people to be drawn to him. And then later that year, official records of Freemasonry show that they chose St. Germain as their representative for some convention they're holding. If you want my opinion, Freemasonry is just a club of wizards, basically. So
Yeah.
I bet St. Germain was actually a wizard, and so he joins Freemasonry, and now, like, Freemasons as we know it now is just like a bastardized version where all these grown men are just like, I want to play wizard, and so then they go and put on cloaks and probably chant and hold hands and do stuff that...
They're just LARPing as Saint Germain.
Yeah, I mean, that would make perfect sense, honestly. They're just adult LARPers who are too masculine to say that they want to LARP, so they join the Freemasons.
See, that's what confuses me is, like I know that they're into some wizard shit, but they're pretending to be, like, hyper-masculine, manly men thing. And then, like, the Elks and the Moose Clubs and stuff are just kind of bastardized versions of that. And it really is just a trickle-down effect. But
yep.
I want to blow the lid on this whole thing.
It goes all the way to the top.
It does, though. It does. It goes to the top of the government. You know how many government leaders are Freemasons in the U.S.?
And those leaders are probably Illuminati as well. So we're going to end up on a hit list, and we're going to mysteriously vanish because we're exposing the secrets. So if I go missing, guys, the Freemasons did it. It was the Illuminati.
I mean, I feel like I'm on a lot of lists. But
given our search histories, yeah, probably.
Yeah. And I don't even use incognito mode. Like, I probably should, but I'm like, you know what? If they're gonna see it, they're gonna see it. Like, they need to know just how unhinged I am so they can, like, not be scared.
It's like, no, this is just her Tuesday afternoon. We're fine.
Like, this is status quo.
So he must have had a soft spot for the French royalty because after the taking of the Bastille and the French Revolution, so this is 1789, Saint Germain apparently shows up to warn France of their immediate future as if he knew what was to come, like he was seeing psychic visions. And so he pops up again at the execution of Marie Antoinette and then again for the murder of Duc de Berry. The last time he's seen in France was in 1820, and each time he looked to be like no older than in his 40s. So if this is the same man that was born in 1710, he would have been 110 years old at that point. So very unlikely, especially at that time period. It's here at this point he kind of drops off basically the face of the planet for roughly 60 years. And people think that he changed his identity, is now going by the name of Major Fraser. But for that, you know what just dawned on me as well is that in Outlander, the last name is Fraser and they're time travelers. So maybe Major Fraser is a time traveler. Although Jamie Fraser, sweet summer child, had to be introduced to the time traveling thing. So he's not gone through the stones yet, I don't think. I haven't watched the most recent season, but...
Honestly, I've not watched Outlander.
Well, I wouldn't suggest it. It's great, but you're going to hate yourself for enjoying it. And it's like a lot of really raunchy sex scenes. It's based off a romance novel, so I should have known, but...
Yeah. I'm not really into the romance novel thing, though, or like, I don't know, romance shows or movies, period. Just because they're very stressful to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if stuff's going good, it just is very stressful to me.
If it was a show that was, like, placed in modern times, I would have no interest, but I love historical costuming, so I was really into this show.
Yeah. I can see that, though.
Yeah.
Historical costuming is great.
So...
Anyways, back on topic.
Yeah. Major Fraser, he's, like, kicking it for 60 years or whatever. He's off bopping around. There's stories about where he's been. But St. Germain, as we know him, he finally pops back up in 1880. So between 1880 and 1900, St. Germain's name becomes pretty popular again with members of the Theosophical Society, which included a famed mystic, Helena Blavatsky. And she claims that he was still alive and working towards the spiritual development of the West. And there's even an alleged genuine photo taken of Blavatsky and St. Germain together. In 1897, the famous French singer Emma Calvé dedicated an autographed portrait of herself to St. Germain. I don't know how that proves he exists, honestly. Like, I could dedicate a photo to fucking George Washington. Like, who cares? Yeah. But anyway... All of that being said, that brings us to New Orleans. vampire capital of the world, or I guess of the United States, because I feel like arguably Transylvania is probably capital of the world. But
Yeah.
anyway, maybe this is why Roddy Rod from last week and his like band of vampire misfits were trying to get to New Orleans. They were like trying to be St. Germain's minions, because allegedly he still haunts the streets, although he didn't die there, so I don't know why. I think it's probably one of those tourist things where like, well, this famous vampire used to live here, so he's a ghost. Jacques, he seemingly appears basically out of nowhere in New Orleans when he moves into his home in 1902, and no one knew where he had come from, and his charming ways apparently were distracting enough for people that they didn't dig any deeper into his history. They just kind of accepted him as like this rich dude that moves in next door. So St. Germain, he settles into a house on Royal Street, and he quickly made the residents of New Orleans view him as someone they should know and respect, because again, he's handsome, he's charming, he's smart and talented and rich, so like what's not to like? He starts to climb the social ladder, so here he is just being his like bougie baddie self in New Orleans, and ladies are like very drawn to him. And so he's often seen out and about with different beautiful women. Maybe it's his good looks or his money, whatever the case. He quickly becomes a very eccentric and sought after member of the high society in the city at that time. And unbeknownst to the elite of New Orleans, they may very well have invited a vampire into their ranks. Shortly after moving into his home on Royal Street, he threw a big old lavish party essentially to announce his arrival. So he's like been there a couple months, 2-3 months. He's, hobnobbed his way into society and is throwing this big old party. And, of course he has this mysterious past, but it doesn't matter to them because he's like very wealthy and cultured. So they're like, oh yeah, you're fine. Whatever. You fit right in. He's just like at this party. He's super charming. He's telling all these tales of adventure. So these parties become like a regular occurrence. And he's like the new head bitch in town. Everyone loves to go to Jacques' house. He throws a hell of a party. However, people do notice at these parties that he's never seen eating any of the food that's provided. He's only drinking what appears to be red wine. And the general public, they are just like, that's kind of fucking weird. But they still are just like, oh, whatever. He just likes to drink, whatever. He doesn't have to eat. And they had a new party spot, so they're into it. They don't really care. But unfortunately, Jacques' time there would be pretty short-lived when during one of these big old parties, this young woman, she somehow is coerced into a secluded area of the mansion with him. He's charming, smart, rich, handsome. I don't think it would have taken much convincing for anyone. And she finds herself like exploring this big old room. And she's got her back to our boy Jacques, and she is unaware of what he's up to. So she kind of like spins around to see what the heck he's doing, and out of nowhere, he charges at her with alarming speed and ferocity, like superhuman speed, and pins her to a wall and begins biting her neck, drawing blood. And so, thankfully, partygoers interrupt the attack. They're like looking for their boy, so they are wandering around this mansion, probably drunk, and like pounding on doors, like, we want Jacques, and they're just like banging on the door looking for him. And obviously this like startles him, and it allows a brief pause in this attack. So this woman, she's able to get away, and he's like in the way of the door, and she's not seeing any other way of escaping him. So what she does, she sees a window and she jumps out of it. Thankfully, she doesn't die. It's only a 2-story mansion, I believe. So she hits the street below, but she has broken bones in her feet and legs. That's the extent of her injuries, thankfully, and she is crying out for help. So police arrive. The woman, she's taken to the hospital, and the explanation that Jacques gives is she was simply drunk and just hurled herself out a window. So the police, they were like, that's a little sus. And so they tell St. Germain that they need him to be at the station first thing in the morning. Because apparently criminals, if you have enough money, you're allowed to get a good night's rest before you go to jail. So morning comes, and surprise, surprise, our boy, Jacques, he does not show up at the station. So the police are like, all right, we got to go check this out. So they go to his house, and not only do they find that Jacques is no longer at the residence, he's gone, long gone, into the wind, back off to Europe, probably, maybe to France. So he's not there, and his belongings are mostly gone too. Some of the things that were left behind, though, The police noticed that there was no food of any sort left behind, which is weird because, you wouldn't travel with food. You would just leave it. There's no utensils to eat with. There's no evidence of any kind that anyone that lived there consumed food. But there was one macabre memento that's left behind. St. Germain had many, many bottles of red wine, which upon tasting were actually found to have been mixed with blood. So, upon further inspection, the police find rooms just covered in bloodstains, each seemingly having occurred at different points in time. We don't know what happened at this point. So, since then, there has been a number of supposed sightings of him, the most recent in the 1970s, when a Frenchman named Richard Chanfray, he claims to be the Mr. St. Germain himself, and he appears on television making these claims, saying that he can turn lead into gold, yada yada. He ends up taking his own life in 1983, thus, kind of proving that that is not our guy. More recently, and arguably probably more believable, modern incarnation of St. Germain has been seen lurking around New Orleans and bothering tourists. Apparently, he wears a black leather jacket and calls himself Jack, although I don't think this is a real St. Germain because, historically, this dude was very charming and smart, and this guy seems to be just a meth addict harassing tourists for crack money.
Yeah. Or at very least, a performative art person, where they're like,
Yeah.
I'm a vampire,
Yeah. Or, if you've ever been to Times Square, all the people that are dressed up in Cookie Monster outfits, trying to get you to take pictures with them, that's kind of the vibe I get off of this guy. But anyway, there's loads of theories about who Saint Germain actually was and how he came to be and what he was. I cut down this list quite a bit, surprisingly, but there's still quite a few options here. So some believe him to be Cartiphilis. I apologize for the pronunciation, but he is the quote unquote legendary wandering Jew. Sounds not PC, but that's what they called it everywhere that I looked. So Cartiphilis was a Roman guard of the high priest Caiaphas in Jerusalem. So he had slapped and mocked Jesus on the way to his crucifixion. And so this soldier was therefore cursed to never die and walk the earth till basically the end of days, which would explain the theories that he had been around since the time of Christ, is that he was this guy. So others, this might be my favorite theory, is that he was King Arthur's legendary Merlin the Magician. He obviously very famous wizard that dabbled in magic and alchemy. Only this time, instead of doing magic, he was spying for, the French king. He had turned his back on the English at this point, if it was indeed Merlin. Others think that he was the famous alchemist and alleged immortal Nicolas Flamel. So this guy was a 14th century French scribe and bookseller. Supposedly he discovered the elixir of eternal youth at Santiago de Compostela and lived for centuries. And actually he was in the Harry Potter books, Nicolas Flamel, as the philosopher of the Philosopher's Stone fame. Or if you prefer, this is another popular opinion, is that he is all of the above. So he is a reincarnation of several famous mystics in succession, including 17th century's Sir Francis Bacon, a famous statesman and scientist. And that would explain why he would retain all of the ancient secrets and knowledge about all of the countries and things from his past lives. Or he was a time traveler from the not too distant future, which would be, why he knew what was coming for, the French Revolution, yada yada, basically explaining his historical knowledge of all these events. The last but not least, and, not surprisingly, the most popular theory is that he's a handsome, immortal vampire, cursed to live forever, taking beautiful lovers in each continent over the centuries, and now he's said to haunt the streets of New Orleans. Again, I don't buy that, because why would he stick around New Orleans? He's clearly a man of the world. There's a bonus theory here, and this is probably the truth here, and honestly, this just makes the most sense, is that he was the son of an exiled Hungarian freedom fighter, Prince Ferenc Rakoczy II. Anyway, he was a formal noble person from, Hungarian royalty, and he is said to have admitted this once, when he was in Germany, on his deathbed. He's like, oh yeah, I'm this dude's son. So that would believe him to have been born around the year 1700. And then he just got genetically lucky with like a youthful appearance. Again, he was into alchemy, so he probably had like face creams and stuff. And that would explain his wealth, for one, and then his ability to kind of seamlessly blend into royal courts throughout Europe. So that is probably the most like realistically popular theory. Like, I personally subscribe, I like the Merlin theory and the vampire theory, but on the real, he was probably this like exiled royal that people just claim to be from time to time.
Yeah, I kind of like the predecessor to the Marie Laveau theory, where it's like it was multiple dudes over the course of history that just like kept transferring their skills, or like, you will be the next Saint Germain.
Yep. They had to train the underling while they were still alive, and then they just kind of took their place.
Well, and also it's like, I can also see that being the case if this guy, he's a party animal. He shows up to the parties after the alcohol's already been flowing, so people are like, you look like you're 45 years old. But it's like, bitch, you are drunk off of absinthe, so you really have no clue. Like, he could have just dyed his hair and put on heavy makeup. And
well, and that's another thing too, like when he, particularly in Casanova's accounts of him, when they would do like dinner parties with pretty ladies and stuff, he would be gifting them with like cosmetics and hair dyes and things that he had concocted. So like, he clearly had some sort of cosmetics, you know, not only just in like face creams, but he would have some sort of like probably foundations or something that would make him look a bit more youthful. And like, he could dye his hair so that he wasn't graying, like all these things that could maintain the illusion of being a lot younger than he was. And I think he was just lucky that he was like in good health for a long time, and that he was able to like put up this appearance of being younger than he was.
Yeah. Also, I feel like people back then were so dumb.
Oh yeah, easily fooled.
And especially these royal types, where they're pretty gullible. They're not, I mean, they're kind of worldly people, but not really.
Right. So yeah, that is the story of Jacques Saint Germain. Time traveler, vampire, man of the world, wizard, ordinary man, alchemist, musician, virtuoso. All of the above.
Yeah, because like in the Castlevania series, he's kind of like an interdimensional character. So is that another one of the theories, that he's like an interdimensional being that just
actually yes,
and like just presents as a human rather than as a Mothman.
Yeah, so there was a theory that he is actually an alien that basically travels interdimensionally and just pops up from time to time.
I could fuck with that theory.
Yeah. And I mean, it would explain why he like just disappeared off the face of the planet after that whole New Orleans thing. Yeah, he's just like, you know what? Maybe I should go chill in dimension number 2 for a while.
I see. I've been grounded here.
Yes. It's tarot time, baby. It's tarot time. Let's find out what's gonna happen this week.
Okay, so for our tarot time this week, we have first the Five of Wands reversed. This is your uneasy in a situation. You're avoiding something. And then we have the Seven of Pentacles upright, which is like cultivating your garden. As you can see, it's like cultivating. This is like success. This is like helping something to grow. We have the Nine of Swords, which is just kind of an overall feeling of like despair or sleeplessness. You kind of have this uneasy situation that you're like sort of trying to cultivate. You're having this patience to cultivate it. You're feeling uneasy about it. But what you really need to be doing in this moment is, trusting your intuition with a High Priestess. Like, you have a feeling how this situation is supposed to go, and you just need to follow that intuition. The reason that you're kind of in this situation is from just being bored and kind of comfortable. That's your Knight of Pentacles reversed. Contentment with the mediocrity. This is something where you need to kind of let go and move with the change. It's the Hanged Man, but it's the Hanged Unicorn reversed. But if you kind of go with your intuition and you kind of go with the flow into the situation, you will have success. The Ten of Cups, that's like pretty much anything that you ever wanted. You will face a little bit of flack back, a little bit of lack of collaboration, but at the end, everything will kind of come full circle, and you'll get sort of everything positive that should be coming to you. So I think that is a pretty good tarot reading for the week.
Yeah, it's a good one. And we'll roll right off of that positivity train right into our fuck yous for the week.
Yeah. Fuck you, Starbucks.
Yeah, for the PSL assault on spooky season.
And lack of large size cups so that I can't get exactly the amount of caffeine that I need.
Yep, that is an atrocity, actually. You know what? I don't have any other fuck yous for the week. I really don't.
Not a single one?
Not a single one. Like, I feel like I had a good week. I didn't engage in any YouTube drama. It was good. So, I'm just gonna say fuck you to Starbucks and have that be that.
I'm gonna say fuck you to the Browns, too, for slandering dear sweet Sarah Winchester.
True. Also, maybe, like, fuck you, Jacques, a little bit because you kind of assaulted a woman. That's not cool, man. And she was so not into it that she would have rather thrown herself out a window than be in that room with you any longer, so.
I'm trying to think. Well, what about fuck you to former Governor Andrew Cuomo?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I mean, that's kind of old news at this point, but
it still warrants being said.
Yeah. I was watching some of that where he was just like, I'm not gonna resign until everything comes out, and then it all came out, and he just kept, like, moving the goalpost. Also, speaking of moving the goalpost, people that still refuse to get vaccinated.
Oh, yeah. Fuck you. Fuck you. Like, super fuck you.
Yeah. Like, it's been proven very safe and effective for everyone. I mean, obviously...
It is approved by the FDA at this point. Like, there's no reasonable excuse to not get it at this point.
Also, fuck you to people that are using ivermectin, which is a horse dewormer, which makes it incredibly hard to get horse dewormer right now.
Yeah, that is just like a new level of stupid. Like, you would rather take your chances
with horse dewormer,
guzzling horse dewormer, than taking actual human medicines.
Yeah. It boggles the mind.
It don't make sense. Y'all ain't right. Y'all just ain't right. All right, so advice for the week. That's perfect. Don't take horse dewormer. It's not worth it. Just get vaxxed.
Yeah. And also, if you're depressed, maybe go get help before it totally derails and you build a 160-room mansion that is awful and eventually collapses.
Yeah. And also, don't believe everyone that says they're Jacques De St Germain because chances are he is long dead.
But what if he's not? What if we know him? Or, like, what if he's someone in the media right now? What if he's Tom Cruise?
Oh, God, I hope not. Okay, so I saw a TikTok of this girl that was like, her cruise ship was docked in Aruba next to Scientology's big yachty cruise ship.
Yes.
And they were, like, there's people dressed in hazmat suits, like, removing items, like, in secret from the boat, and I want to know what they were. Was it that lady? The founder of Scientology, not founder, but the
wife of the founder who's been missing for like 10 years.
I wonder if they're just trying to remove her from the yacht in pieces in secret.
Now I'm looking up photos of Saint Germain. He looks like all the photos here, he looks a little like...
I am not unconvinced that he and Casanova didn't have like a little side thing.
Yeah.
I feel like Casanova was definitely bisexual, at least.
Maybe that is why everyone believed him so much, is that he was just fucking everybody. And so he's like, yeah, I'm 300 years old. And they're like, you know what? You're right.
You're absolutely right. All right, I'm going to wrap it up because it is my lunchtime and I'm hungry. So, guys, we know the drill by now. If you care to see any of our other links to our other social medias, it's in the description below, to the side, on whatever podcast app you're streaming us on. You know the drill. You're smart. You'll figure it out. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.